All right. Let's do this thing. Hey, by the way, you mentioned in college vernacular, and you said 400 series. I take it, and keep in mind, almost everybody here, Kelly, never went to
college.
My college. I went to a U of U basketball game once.
That was your college?
That was my college experience.
I took AP classes in high school and never stepped foot in a college after that.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Okay, now Kelly went to college. I went to college.
You did?
You did?
You did?
Really?
Yeah, how cute.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's
That's
get
adorable.
beyond.
All right.
Get beyond me being cute. And
Does
let's
community
do
count?
I actually have a professorship.
Yeah. Okay.
I do. I do.
Now you're-
I
Yeah, he
actually
printed
do.
it out online.
Well, it's not like my online ministry.
Like
That's
your
a totally different
online
thing.
IQ test. All right.
Thanks, DeVrod.
I love it. All right, we're gonna actually rock and roll on some reporting today, and we want to go a little beyond some of the basic stuff. I know that a lot of you have built, your certainly your collections, and then if you've delved into reports, maybe some fairly simple filters. We want to go a little deeper than that today. There is some extra content, and Annie, I apologize. I've added two new reports that aren't in the extra content, but yeah, there's
We
some
just
extra
built
content
those this morning when we were discussing things.
Keep in mind, there's a couple of them that won't work in your environment. I mean, the one that says wrong way is not going to give you what you're expecting.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there's the app comparison between three computers. You have to actually change the computer names to match your environment, etc. We'll cover all of that. All right, Lex, what do you want to hit first, bro?
Honestly, let's just talk. Let's actually pop up the what is Chrome? Yeah.
You want to do that one?
Let's do that.
Okay.
Okay. So first of all, one of the things we have a lot of support questions about are, how do I get? I know how to get everybody who has Chrome. How do I get a machine that doesn't have Chrome or whatever application?
Okay.
So where that comes into play is it's a one-to-many relationship. So like a computer has one CPU, it has one user. That's a one-to-one relationship. But a computer can have many applications. So.
Well, I'm going to actually throw down the way we report. So obviously a computer can have multiple CPUs, but we actually throw down in the computer table. There's a way where you can see in one record all the CPUs.
Yeah. Okay. So it's stored per record.
But that's a good point because that gets in a little bit more into the advanced. One OS, one
computer name.
One OS is going to be either 32-bit or 64-bit. It's not going to be both. So when we're talking about a one-to-one relationship, that's very important, especially the way SQL,
pulls data.
Yeah, the way not it pulls data, but the way the filters work, and we'll cover that. So yeah, if you look at these filters, once again, these are machines that don't have Chrome. But notice I'm going to hurry and show you this one real quick. This is how you would do
a report to find Chrome.
Yes.
So basically, you're going to look for computers that have an application that contains Chrome,
and that's and the way the application, the way the filters work, we look into the applications table, and it has to have a relationship with the computer table. But since a computer can have many applications, there's one computer to many applications. That's a one-to-many. But the reason why you can do a different filter for finding it is the way it evaluates those tables. So in this filter, I'm going to say any computer that has an application name that contains Chrome. All right. That every application is evaluated. So let's say a computer has 60 applications. It reads each application name and says, does the name contain Chrome? And it'll evaluate Microsoft Office. No, it doesn't contain Chrome. Notepad++, yada, yada. And then it finds one, okay, that matches.
And it'll return the computer name, because that's what we're asking.
Yes, and so this is where a lot of people will say, okay, now these are all my Chromes. How do I find those that don't? Well, they'll make the mistake of saying does not contain.
Give me a computer that has any application that does not contain Chrome.
Since going back to those 60 applications, if one of those is Chrome, 59 of them are going to match this pattern because they have an application that does not contain the word Chrome. That is why
we have to do this a little different.
So if you look at what Lex wrote here on the Chrome Enterprise not installed.
So basically what you're looking for is, tell me all the machines that have an application called Chrome, and then return me the ones that do not have.
Correct.
that.
So
So
here-
this is how this is done.
By the way, you're looking at this. We're using
System variable.
Yeah, a system variable, and that you can always tell a system variable if it begins with a $sign, open bracket, and then a custom variable. That's a variable that you create if it begins with a @ sign. So
I was just highlighting that so you can see
Yep.
what that variable
you
actually
can always
equals.
yes you can. This is based off of feedback from our users. We want to be able to see what those values are. If you just hover over that little variable drop down there, you will actually see what that variable equals. In this case, Google Chrome. So notice we're still saying it matches this pattern of Google Chrome. However, notice this grouping. These are called grouping filters. These are value filters. The grouping filters themselves just apply things like, in this case, not any. So yes, what you're saying is when you do a not any, it evaluates all the applications and then is able to say, now show me those computers where none of those applications contain, in this case, Google Chrome.
Yep.
So this is how you would get it. This is how you would show computers that don't have Chrome.
Now, speaking of advanced reporting, what about machines that we've added that don't have a scan? They're not going to have Chrome on them. They may actually have it. To make sure that we don't include those on this, that's why that bottom
Yeah,
filters
there's
are-
another filter there that says a computer. In the computer table we have a field called never scanned, and it's a Boolean. It's just true or false. And the reason why this is important is, remember, we're saying a not any. So a computer that doesn't have anything in the applications table because it's never been successfully scanned, it would actually, without this second filter here, it would actually pass that because yes, it's true. None of
the
records
non-existent applications at this
contain
point.
Chrome.
Yeah.
So by doing this, now there's another way you could do this. You just have to kind of think. You have to, anytime you're building filters, I don't care how good you are at SQL, you're going to have to go. Oh, now hold on. Let me do the math real quick. You could get away with not having to have this second filter. I'm going to move this up. If you wanted to do something like this. And in this case, not any, you would change that to true.
Because that not any negates that.
Yeah, because we're saying I don't care if it's any computer that has Chrome or any computer that has never been scanned. Because remember, like you said, negates. So this would also return the same number of records. Where you want to be careful on these grouping filters, if you don't mind, I'm going to show you this. Where you want to be careful is on something like this. In the grouping filters, be careful when you are pulling data from the same table. So I'll come back over here. I'm going to create a new group filter, all, and then underneath all, I'll create a value filter. So some of you might be thinking, I want to show computers that have an application. Chrome and Firefox. So you might say the application name contains
Firefox.
Firefox, and the application name contains Chrome. Now, there's a reason why this will always return 0 records. If I run this, you won't see anything returned. It's because
there is
underneath the same grouping, you're saying an application name contains Firefox and Chrome.
Yep.
So unless you have an application name that contains both those words, Firefox
Chrome.
and Chrome in either order, this is going to return nothing. You could do this if you went to something like this, any, but what that would do is show you any computer that had Firefox
or Chrome.
Chrome.
That's an or.
And it could show you computers that had both, but it would also show you computers that had only one of those. So depending on what you want, just be careful. The reason I'm calling that out is to be careful how you're grouping these. We actually have, go ahead.
You do that drop down. So any's an or. Okay. All would be an and.
All would be an and then you have the inverse.
All or and the inverse. So that's
not all
and an or there. So
now we actually have. If you've grabbed the extra content, we actually show you a couple of ways to do this, where you're saying, I want to see Firefox and Chrome. So computers that have both. Maybe you're thinking, we're going to settle on one browser, and I want to find all those computers that have both because we're going to lose Chrome and stick with Firefox or something like that. So here's a right way to do it. All right, I'm going to right click on that and say define report. This is a good way to do it. If you're going to do, if you show computers that have either or, notice they each have their own grouping, but all have to be true. And this top one, it feeds up. So anything under here, and there's only one, but anything under this group, all of these have to return true. And then anything under here has to be true. And then as it reaches up, the all means all of these subgroups
have to
return true.
Yeah.
So this is a great way to show you computers that have both. But what I want to call out, and this gets a little counterintuitive. This will work if you are only showing, in this case, something from the computer table. So I want to see the computer name. Hit run report. These computers, I'm confident, have both Firefox and Chrome. If you want to show the actual applications, this is a way that people will often do it, and this is the wrong way. Notice in my columns I'm showing computer, and then I want to see the application name and the application version. And in the filters, I'm doing the same filters, but it's going to return 0 records. And the reason for that is the way our basic reporting works. Once again, it's counterintuitive, but once you're starting to say only show me these applications, in this case, you actually have to show you the right way. It's easier to
just show you than to tell you.
Right way if you're displaying the apps. And I definitely recommend that you grab this extra content that Annie has made available. Notice you have to kind of duplicate this. Under this main grouping, I have another one that says any of these applications. So show a computer that has any of these, Google Chrome. And then on the same level, an all, and this is very important, the computer name contains blank. And this is just important for the way the basic reports work. And then under that, you have, once again, kind of duplicated, a separate one for Chrome and Firefox. So the way these work goes inside out. It's going to find all of the computers that have Chrome and Firefox. But it has to return up to the computer table in this case. And then this one here helps to further that along because of the way that we do the relationships in the basic reports. By running this report, now you can see, the computer Abby has Chrome of this version and Firefox of this version. All right. So study that. Just remember, if you want to show those applications, you need to have
that
at some point
SQL lower.
You need to have that. Okay. We have a question. I understand.
Ah, yes, the lovely Monica's got a question.
Hold on. We're not showing it here.
It's not coming up?
You know what? Just go ahead and read it.
Let me read this to you. At what point is it better to use an SQL report instead of a basic report?
Well, hi, Monica. The answer, you guys will hopefully find out why that wasn't able to show. Okay, so why would you want to show an SQL? Really, it comes down to this. If you can do something fairly simply in a basic report, do it. It's just much more recommended. There are times where you really have to use an SQL, and these are where you get really complex subselects. And I'm going to, obviously, if you're using an SQL report, you're going to have some SQL knowledge if you're building this. But it really complex
subqueries, union queries.
Unions are a huge one. The basic reports usually nail down the joins, but keep in mind when you're building a basic report, you're effectively all of the tables that you're going to display have to have a relationship with each other. So this is where here's where you'd want to use an SQL. Let's say I'm going to create a report where I want to say, show me the computer name. Show me an application name, and then show me, a service. So notice I can't. I have said show me computers and applications, so those two have a relationship, but I can't choose any of these other tables.
And the reason being is you've got to be able to link computer application and service table. They all have to have related links in this situation for this to work. That's why you'd have to use a SQL query.
That's right. So in this case, if you really wanted to query a bunch of different tables that don't have relationships, except for with the computer table, you're going to need to use very creative joins as well as subselects or subqueries in an SQL report. I'm going to actually show you. This is I think a good segue into a SQL report. But in this case, this SQL report is contingent on a registry scanner. So notice we've got.
Are we going static and
Right here.
dynamic?
Nope.
Nope.
Actually, no, I'm going to do this. Yeah, DHCP static. Thank you.
Yeah.
I should listen to you more often.
That'll never happen.
I'm going to right click and say define report. So the purpose for this report is basically to show which computers, their IP address, at least the IP address is resolved by DNS. So, a computer can be multi-homed and have multiple IP addresses. We're not necessarily talking about that. We're talking about the address that's resolved to us through DNS. Is that address static or dynamic? Now, in order to grab that, we have to write a custom registry scanner, and then this query references those registry tables.
Yeah.
All right. So we'll come back to this, but in order to get this information, if you're ever going to do a registry or a file query, you have to have the appropriate scanners to grab those files or those registry values that you're expecting, and you do that in preferences. So there is on the extra content. Yeah, there's one that's called a scan profile. Import that, and let's see. Go down to scan profiles. When you import it, you don't have to import it from within this window. You can just from the main window hit Control I or import. Grab that. We'll see that it's a scan profile, and we'll add it. It's called DHCP static. Going to open this up. Generally, as a rule, I like to always throw computer details scanner. Remember, you can always add or remove scanners from scan profiles. So I've added the computer details. I like that one. I think it's important. And then the registry. We've added, you can have multiple registry scanners in a scan profile. In this particular scanner, we are simply saying, from this Hive, HQ local machine, we're going to use, what is it, space, enter, what is it?
You highlighting?
There we go.
Boy, I did that
That
lousy.
sucked. Well done. Well done.
At least you did it.
Yeah.
Here, let me
we're
try that again. We'll circle
in HQ local machine Hive, we're going system, the current control set, services, TCP/IP. Obviously, you're going to want to always have a cheat sheet going here. I mean, for crying out loud, just go to the registry and find out exactly what we're looking for. So we're looking at HQ local machine. Yeah, turn that. Thanks, JJ. HQ local machine, system, current control set. I think it's services. Was it TCP/IP? Yep. TCP/IP, parameters, and what were parameters? Interfaces, and then we use some wildcards, and this is where you're going to remember, if you ever have a question about, if you want to look at the documentation, just whatever context you're in this case this window, just hit F1. That'll open up the help for that, in this case a registry scanner, and you will see some help on how to use these wildcards. But the reason I'm using wildcards, I could just say grab everything under interfaces, but that'd be a lot of data.
Yeah. A lot of stuff you're not going to need.
Yeah, it's just adding bulk to your database. If you're never going to need it, don't do it. So the two splats means anything under interfaces, any key that contains an IP address value in this case. So notice we're just saying look under all the interfaces for any subkey, however far down that goes. So it could go pretty far, and then a value of IP address or DHCP IP address. Once again, you don't have to specify the values, but if you know what you want, we recommend that you get as narrow of a scope as possible.
Far down that tree as you can.
So once you do this, and you can add this registry scanner to your application's scan profile if you want. In this case, we just created a new scan profile. But then after you create that scan profile, you need to go out to your computers.
Run that scan.
Yeah, and just click scan.
DHCP static.
Actually, what we want to do, I'm going to right click on this, go to scan collection, and then you just choose that DHCP. You do choose whatever scan profile you've created, and it scans those. You'll have to have those scanned in order to have
Actually be able
this
to
report
show after the data.
So now we're going to go DHCP static IP address. Just run that, and this will show you all the computers and whether or not the IP address that we have, and whether it was static or whether it was DHCP. Now, when you guys import this, you'll notice you don't have an ID here. And since this is advanced reporting, I wanted to call this out. In an SQL report, if you want to be able to double-click on the returned computer, you have to actually show, and notice I've got the computer ID in the display. You have to actually have the computer ID. And if you don't have that, you won't be able to open up. Let me run this. You won't be able to just, it's up to you.
Double click on the computer.
You won't be able to double click on that computer and open it up. I mean, if you right click on this and say, there, open, oh, well, maybe it has to, maybe that computer
Double
ID
click on
has,
that, you mean?
no, maybe the ID has to be number 1. I made the change to this. Have the ID be the very first returned. That's important. That's only if you want to open the computer from here. Anyway, let's go back to the define report. And this is a case where we're doing a union. And for a union, this is a case like Monica where you would want to use an SQL report.
But also mention right there, you see those sub-selects in there, where a computer is in and then a whole new selection. It's always a good spot to do these SQLs also, because they're complex queries.
They are complex, but it was really the union is what made me have to do this. Feel free to poke around on this one. This is an example of where I think you'd want to do this. If you don't use the union, you could get this in a basic report, but I don't know. I like it this way.
Yeah.
There you go. And once again, this just scrolling on down, this shows the statics, and then it shows which IP addresses are allocated from DHCP. So hopefully this enlightened you to also the power of registry. Yeah, go for it.
Let's hit a question.
Dear Shane and Lex, what is the difference between all, any, not all, and not any? I've had times when making groups where not all worked over not any, and vice versa. Sincerely, Tricky Nicky W.
Okay, so the not all, it can be, once again, I don't care how well versed you are, and Adam, our main developer, he's a wizard with this stuff, and I see him when he's doing this, he'll have to stop and go,
Think
okay,
for a minute.
Yeah, he'll think, okay, which one is this?
So all would be an and, basically. Any would be an or, and then not would negate either of those.
Correct. So I'm going to go to the define report. If I remember how we moved this up earlier. All right. Here's an example. Notice I used not any here. Why? Because any, in this case either, but that means only one of these these value filters have to return true. When you're using an any or not any, only one. So in this case, this works because if the computer contains Chrome, or if the computer has never been scanned, so you'd change that to true in this case. If either of those are true, then I don't want to show this computer. If I were to say, so let's see what this shows. Run the report. We have 62 computers that have both, that have A, been scanned, and B, they have Firefox and Chrome. If I were
they
to
don't have Chrome.
They don't have Chrome. If I were to change this to a not all, run that, that's a little different. All right. And it's
154 rows. So how many computers don't have Chrome and have never been scanned?
So we run this again, and you're going to get down to 62. You just really have to do the math. What are you asking? Remember, the alls are basically ands, and an all means everything has to return true, and then an any is just one of those subs have to return true. So you have to really think about where what you're going with, where you're going with this. Nope, let me just change it. Do we want to? I can move on, or is there another question? All right.
Handsome Jason A. would like to know, how do we run report and save data to file.csv option with the custom field data included?
How do we run report and save data to file CSV option with the okay. I'm still processing. Hey, Jason, how's it going?
So I think that's two processes. One, you can build the report, and then two, export it to CSV. So
Okay, so well, let's cover that. Number one, if you want the custom field, and thank you for mentioning that. So the custom fields, remember, there's some data that we can't collect from an inventory scan. So I'm going to go back to preferences. When you're using custom fields, first of all, those custom fields have to be defined, and there's a
custom fields.
In this case, we have one called cost center. That means, in this case, we've just said this is a cost center is a text field. Whatever custom fields you enter are going to end up in the computer table.
Yep.
And since it's in the computer table, that means you can also show it in the collection window. Keep that in mind. So let's say I'm going to come over here, since we've added cost center. See this little icon up here? You can customize that. That takes you right back to collections, by the way. To the collection page. I'm going to add, and this effectively shows you what's in the, not just a computer table, there's a couple of other things we do here, but basically a one-to-one relationship. There's your cost center. Anything that you do.
Anything you add will get added to the computer table.
Correct. So I'm going to add the cost center there. Add it. I'll move this down a little bit. Right past the OS. All right. So there's my cost center. That's a custom field. So basically, if you want to include this in your report, when you build a report, I'm going to do a new report, and we'll do a basic.
Let's look for any computer that's in the cost center, IT.
Okay. Cost center, IT. Perfect. So show the computer name, and in the computer table again, we will come down and say, let's go to cost center. Because once again, that is what we call this particular
Custom
item.
field.
So if I were to hit save on this, it would show any computer and its cost center, even if it's null. But to do what Lex was saying, only show the IT ones. We'll come over here to filters and just do a very simple, in the computer table, go to cost center. We'll change that to equals.
IT. So now when you report on it, you can filter on it.
And now we have 15 computers that are in the IT cost center. You can do there's a couple of ways you can print this out. You can hit print preview. Cool thing about the print preview is it gives you this nice little report here. And then you can save it. One of the things you can save it as is a CSV file. And we're not going to get into auto reports, but it's auto reports. We definitely recommend that you jump into auto reports. This is the way for you to have reports defined that are run on a schedule, maybe either email. So every Monday morning you want to see all the computers that have an old version of Java. What was that, JJ?
We'll cover it in a future webcast.
Yeah, we will. Yeah, but as an auto report, you can have reports that you have defined, that you've built, run on a schedule, dropped on a file share or emailed or whatever.
Yep.
We'll cover that in a future webcast. Anyway, there we go.
That's how you get that.
That's how you would do that, buddy.
And the nice thing is there are a lot of just different options there. Again, PDF, HTML. Yeah, check it out. See what works best for your environment.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Do we have, is there another question, or you want me to move on down the line?
And we have a question from Mr. Black E. Is there a way to use reports to find all the outdated software per computer?
That's a pretty tall.
Yeah, the
order
answer is yes, but guess what? You're going to need to build that and define what constitutes an old version of software.
Yeah.
So the answer is yes. But that report's going to get fairly,
antiquated as soon as you get a new version.
Well, if you use variables,
okay,
then you're good. If you use variables to track your versions, so it's very important if you're going to use variables. Say you have applications. I'm going to go back in here to preferences.
Variables.
All the way down here in variables. Now, if you're using applications that are in the collection library, you can use the system variables. You have to have an enterprise level license for that.
Yeah.
And these are, you can see these are grayed out, but you can see what all of these values are. Any collection or report that you want to say, do you have Adobe Acrobat DC? You would use that variable, that $, that variable name.
We use app ver for version, if you look through there.
Yeah, so if you come down to the app vers, you see all these different versions, and we keep these up to date. You're going to want to do something similar. So let's say that you have an app, oh, pardon me. Let's go back to custom. So you're going to create some custom variables and use whatever naming standard you want. It doesn't matter. But let's say that you want to just look for, ver AutoCAD. Okay. And once again, you could call this Nick Cave if you want.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter as long as you reference that. What is the latest version that you're looking for? Maybe we'll say something like 17.0.1. Then any collection or report that references that value. Remember, if it's a custom variable, it begins with an at, not a $.
Yep.
Anything that references that is going to evaluate against 1701. When a new version comes out, all you'd have to do is come one place and change it.
So if you build collections and reports off this version, one change fixes all.
Fix all of them.
Yep.
You're going to want to have your necessary variables, and then in your report, you're just going to have to say, show me all the computers that have either this
This or
app,
this or this or this
and
or
these
this.
versions are like this. So you're going to have to build that because you have to define what your environment is looking for and what constitutes an old version or a new version.
Can totally be done. It's a tall order if you got a lot of applications, man.
Yeah, it is. But once again, it can
be done.
It can be done. I want to jump into
Pattern matching.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, not just pattern matching. I want to look at some of the comparisons.
Okay.
If you're using SQL, these would be operators. So I'm going to define the report. So this case, this is a report, and we're just returning the computer and the application name and version. Where I run that, it's going to say these are Firefox 64-bit, but we're using. Oops, I didn't change the name of that. I think this is a expression.
Expression.
So
you also spell like me, man. Firefox.
Thanks for catching that, brother. All right, so in the filters, notice I'm using what's called a regular expression here. We have so many different comparisons that you can choose from. You see us use contains a lot.
That'd be, anywhere in that pattern or in the field contains, boom, Firefox.
And then of course there's equal, and equal means it has to fully equal that. So if you were to say, show me any application that equals Mozilla Firefox, you're going to return 0. Why? Because Firefox doesn't just say Mozilla Firefox. The name is actually like Mozilla Firefox, the language, the architecture, so it's x86, x64. That's what we usually use contains. But you can use something like a regular expression, and then you just have to do regular expressions. So zoom in on that, JJ. So in this case, and even more if you can, in this case, regular expression, the caret means the beginning of the line. So show me any computer that has Mozilla Firefox, and then a .splat just basically means any character, even if it's a space, doesn't matter.
Any characters at that point.
Any alpha, numeric, or space.
Symbol, yeah.
That's the .splat. And then it has to also contain 64 somewhere in that name. By running this, I will grab all the computers that say Firefox, the 64-bit version, and that way I know. Now you can also do this not from regular expressions. If this overwhelms you, which it may, you can use, depending on the use case, you can use a pattern. And a pattern is kind of a very simple regular expression. It just effectively has 2 different wildcards. In this case, I just say for the 32-bit version, anything that matches a pattern, Mozilla Firefox, doesn't have to begin with Mozilla. It just, so in this case it does. It starts with Mozilla Firefox, and then there's a splat, and the splat is just, it's a wildcard for anything, and any number of characters, and then it contains 86, and then any number of characters that follow that. That last asterisk is very important because, unlike a regular expression, you do have to have this if there's going to be anything following. And this will now show you all the computers that have 86 in the name along with Firefox. If it may not begin with Firefox and you're using a matches pattern, then you're going to want to do add a splat there. Now, we mentioned 2 different wildcards. There's also a wildcard for, it's just a question mark, and that just matches.
Single character. Single whatever, character, symbol, yeah.
Yep. So that it's rarely used, but we have that option in there. And of course, once again, you can find this in the documentation. So matches pattern, matches expression. And then you'll notice that we use, when you're evaluating versions, very important, when you're evaluating versions, we ask that you use the version comparisons, all right? So let me see if I can find...
Just grab one of our collections. We use the filter there, yeah.
So let's go to GIMP here, the latest. Notice we have that version up there. So this shows all the computers that have at least version 2.8.20 of GIMP. If we open this up, you're going to see how we use this version comparison. Version not lower than. By the way, if you ever want to change anything in the collection library, you just have to copy it out of the collection library. It is just a copy. So now this is no longer really updated if we ever change anything besides the variable. But now now that it's outside, this is as though I had just created it. We're saying the version, you'll see all those version comparisons here. And the reason why it's important to use version when you're talking about versions is these are built to expect the way versions are usually displayed, which is usually an integer dot, integer dot, or integer comma. Basically, we look for integers delimited by commas or dots up to the first non-numeric character. So if you have 7 layers of dot, 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 dot versions, those will evaluate them properly. And it's very important that you use the versions. If you don't use the versions, then...
Less than or equal to it. It starts doing a numeric.
Correct. A 10.1 would actually show as a lower version than a 9.1, because if you're not using the versions, the string matching sees that 1 as lower than 9, even though it's supposed to evaluate that 10, right? So use the versions when you're talking about evaluating versions. It's just that simple. Hopefully that clears that up. It's very important that you use that. Otherwise, you will get results at some point that you're not expecting. Do we have any more questions? If not, I'll just jump into...
Okay.
Okay. All right, so Lex, you built one called Workstations Only. Now I'm going to... So this is basically saying...
This is actually a really, really simple report. And, I want workstations, so the couple of things you need to understand is computer OS versus the computer OS name here. The computer OS obviously gives me the number. These are Windows 10. But what I was doing the filter on was on the name.
The OS name.
The OS name. So obviously, I'm looking for any OS name that does not contain the word server.
And the reason, remember, you saw us using like a not any when we're talking about applications because of the one-to-many relationship. But when you're comparing something like an OS, where there's just a one-to-one, one computer will have one OS, you can use the does not contain because there's only one OS there. Only
one evaluation.
One record per computer to evaluate. So here, he could say, show me all the computers. In this case, you have your computer, your OS. Remember, the OS and the OS name is different. The OS is something that we put in there to just make the short version of whatever operating system. So we'll just run this
Obviously,
again.
Windows 10 is going to show up as the OS version.
And there's so many different versions, OS names. So you have your Windows 10 Enterprise N 2015 LTSB. The short version of that is 10. And all of these are 10, but if you want to break down the name, the thing about it is any Microsoft server is going to have server in the OS name. So go back to those.
If I change this filter right here to contains, I'm now just going to pull all the servers. Simple enough.
There you go. Now, I want to really quick call out the collection source. This is very important. This was built into our reporting, and that is you can always run this against a particular collection. So let's say that you only wanted to look at, in this case, servers, since you just changed that filter, but instead of going against all computers, maybe just scroll on down and show, let's go to PowerShell and see if there's just only servers that have PowerShell 5, or more appropriately, only servers that are in that collection. So your collection source, you don't have to change your filters, you don't have to change anything about the report.
Looking at a different subset of data.
All you're saying is, instead of looking at all the computers, just look at computers that are in this collection. The computers that have iTunes, or the computers that have an old version of Chrome.
Filter's already been built here. We're just going to use that filter with these new filters.
So that's your collection source. In SQL parlance, if you still want to use the collection source, we have what's called a placeholder. Let's see. Do I have that in this one? No. When you create, I don't think I actually in this. When you create a new report that's an SQL, you're going to notice we have one clause in, or one condition in the where clause, and that is where, and it's computer filter in between the greater than, less than. This right here, where computer filter, is your collection source. So if you're building a SQL report, you need to have somewhere in your where the computer filter. So if you have additional clauses in there, where application name like Chrome, then do an and computer filter. If you don't have that, your SQL report will run against all computers in your database all the time, and it won't respect this computer's collection source. So here, if you just run this out the gate, it's going to show you the computer name and their description. But if you say go to the collection source, notice I had 154. Let's see. Let's go down to Internet Explorer 10. Boom. It's only going to show you. It honors that. It honors that collection source. Whereas if you were to change that, if you were just to remove this
altogether, it goes against everything in the computer.
It will
table.
always go against everything, regardless of what your collection source is. So that placeholder called computer filter is important. Do we have any more questions, JJ? Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, we'll just wrap it up. So, hey, feel free to go through the extra content that Annie made available. If you have any questions, shoot us out to it. And really quick, what's a takeaway of when you'd want to use a collection versus a report?
Okay, use a collection if it's an actionable item. I want to be able to deploy to computers that I found have this.
Yeah, when you're using PDQ deploy, you can say deploy to this collection. You can't say deploy to this report.
Yeah.
Also, you'll see a collection that shows all machines that have an old version of Firefox, but you don't know what those old versions are. If you want to see what all those old versions are, that's where you need a report.
Yep.
All right. Yeah. Cool. Rock on.
All right.
Yeah. There's a lot. There's some things we didn't cover, but I could talk about this stuff all day long.
We actually could.
Yeah.
So.
Rock on, everybody. Thanks for watching. We'll talk to you later.
Thanks for joining our webcast today. Congratulations to Nick W. and yes, Monica K., winners of PDQ swag. Send us your info at webcast@pdq.com. Also, we are looking for guest bloggers regarding antivirus. So get your information to Valdinger at adminarsenal.net. He'll be in touch and we'll get you up on our blog. Thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you back here next week.